Captain Ryan Hayes stood at the airport gate, the early morning light streaming through the tall glass windows casting long, cold shadows across the polished floor. The bustling crowd moved past him, suitcases rattling, kids squealing, and announcements echoing overhead, but none of it seemed to exist. His focus was singular, the flag-draped coffin resting on the rolling trolley before him. Every detail was precise, the crisp fold of the American flag, the polished brass pins, the careful positioning that ensured dignity and respect. The weight of the loss, of the life ended too soon, pressed heavily against his chest. Private First Class Daniel Reyes had been a bright light, a soldier with unwavering courage who had faced danger with a grin, whose laughter had once filled the barracks. Now he lay silent, and Ryan's duty was clear: escort him home. The airport clerk approached hesitantly, clipboard in hand, her expression a mixture of confusion and unease. "Sir, I'm sorry, there's a problem with transporting the remains," she said, her voice wavering as she glanced toward the coffin. Ryan didn't immediately respond. He had heard this before. Bureaucracy clashing with duty, the endless paperwork that somehow seemed meaningless in the face of a soldier's sacrifice. He inhaled deeply, forcing his body to stay composed, the disciplined posture drilled into him during years of service. "Explain," he said finally, his tone calm but carrying an unmistakable weight. The clerk shuffled her papers, fingers trembling slightly as she flipped through the forms. "It says here, there's an issue with the airline's protocol. We need confirmation from the military office before proceeding." Ryan's eyes narrowed, a flicker of impatience creeping beneath his otherwise calm demeanor. He could feel the stares of passengers beginning to fall upon them, whispers starting to ripple through the crowd. Some were curious, others respectful, sensing the gravity of the moment without needing words. "I am the military escort," Ryan said, his voice firm now, leaving no room for doubt. "I have all necessary documentation. This is a service member's final transport, and it will not be delayed." The clerk hesitated, clearly unprepared for someone who refused to bend to confusion or red tape. Ryan noticed her nervous glances toward the manager's desk, and he could almost see the gears turning in her mind. How she could possibly enforce rules against an armed, uniformed officer carrying out the solemn duty of honoring a fallen soldier. His eyes softened slightly as he looked at the coffin, the flag draped so carefully over Daniel's still form. Memories of the field, of firefights and midnight watches, and of the laughter and courage of the young soldier surged within him. This wasn't just protocol, it was human dignity. It was respect for life and sacrifice. A small crowd had begun to gather around them, sensing the tension and the unusual nature of the scene. Ryan noticed a young mother holding her child back, her eyes wide, while a man in a business suit silently nodded in recognition. He felt a flicker of gratitude for their silent acknowledgement of what was unfolding, but there was no time for distraction. His focus remained unshaken. "I've escorted dozens of fallen soldiers," he said, his voice steady, commanding attention without raising it. "I know the procedure. I am responsible. There will be no delay." The clerk swallowed hard, her fingers tightening on the clipboard. "But, sir, we have to follow our," she began, but Ryan's gaze cut through her words, not harshly, but with the authority of someone who had seen too much to allow inefficiency to impede honor. He stepped slightly closer to the coffin, standing tall, shoulders squared, every movement deliberate. "There are no exceptions here," he said simply. "Not for paperwork, not for schedules. Private Reyes gave everything for this country. The least we can do is ensure his journey home is honored, without obstruction." The clerk's hands shook as she glanced again toward the approaching manager, clearly seeking backup, yet unsure how to enforce rules against a figure so composed, so resolute. Ryan took a deep breath, centering himself, feeling the weight of responsibility as keenly as he felt the weight of the flag on the coffin. Around them, the ambient noise of the airport seemed to fade, leaving only the quiet gravity of the moment, the finality of a life given in service, and the duty of those left behind to honor it with respect and integrity. As the manager hurried toward the scene, the clerk stepped aside, realizing instinctively that this was not a situation to challenge. Ryan's eyes remained on the coffin, steady, resolute. Every detail, every second mattered, and he would not falter. This was more than protocol, this was duty. And in that moment, amidst the fluorescent lights and moving crowds, Captain Ryan Hayes stood as the living embodiment of respect, honor, and the unwavering commitment to bring a fallen soldier home. The manager reached them, but Ryan's posture did not waver, his voice calm, unwavering. "He will fly today," he said simply. The words were quiet, yet in their simplicity lay absolute authority. In that moment, the airline understood that some rules could not stand against honor, against duty, against respect for a life given in sacrifice. The hum of the jet engines filled the cabin as Captain Ryan Hayes guided the coffin down the aisle, flanked by a small entourage of airline personnel and military staff. The interior of the plane smelled faintly of antiseptic and polished metal, but for Ryan, none of it mattered. Every step, every careful adjustment of the trolley, was performed with the precision of years of training. Private First Class Daniel Reyes lay before him, silent and still, yet somehow profoundly present. Ryan's mind wandered to memories of the soldier's final days, the shared jokes in the barracks, the quiet courage in the face of danger, the unwavering commitment to his fellow soldiers. Each memory was a hammer against the ache in his chest, a reminder of why he was here. As they settled the coffin into its specially designated area, one of the flight attendants approached nervously, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Sir, I just wanted to make sure everything is okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan glanced at her, noting the mixture of reverence and unease. "Everything is fine," he replied softly, but firmly. "This is his journey home. We honor him by ensuring it is treated with respect, nothing more, nothing less." She nodded, stepping back, her eyes glistening slightly, and Ryan returned his attention to the solemn task at hand. The plane took off, and the steady roar of the engines seemed to underscore the weight of the moment. Ryan remained standing by the coffin, occasionally checking the straps and ensuring the flag remained perfectly draped. Beside him, a military liaison was quietly coordinating with ground personnel, ensuring that every step of the transport was seamless. Ryan's mind, however, was elsewhere, focused on the soldier before him. Daniel had been more than just a comrade, he had been a brother in arms, someone who had laughed in the darkest moments and reminded everyone around him of the human capacity for courage. Now, all that remained of that energy was encapsulated in this coffin, this silent reminder of sacrifice. Minutes stretched into an hour as Ryan maintained his vigil. The hum of conversation from other passengers faded to background noise, and the gravity of the flight seemed to crystallize into a kind of sacred stillness. Occasionally, a steward would glance nervously at him, unsure whether to approach or maintain distance, sensing that his presence was more than mere protocol. Ryan's voice broke the silence only once, when a young officer assisting with the transport asked a logistical question about the paperwork. "Focus on ensuring the flag is secure," Ryan instructed, his tone calm but carrying the weight of authority. "Every detail matters. Every detail honors him." The memories continued to surge through Ryan's mind, unbidden. He recalled the day Daniel had first joined the unit, full of eagerness and nervous energy, wide-eyed at the enormity of the uniform and the responsibilities it entailed. He remembered the soldier's first deployment, the letters home filled with a mixture of humor, hope, and concern for the men and women around him. And he remembered the final mission, the one that had claimed Daniel's life, a firefight in harsh terrain, against an enemy as relentless as fate itself. Ryan had been there when the call came in, the hollow echo of loss reverberating through the unit. Nothing in the world felt heavier than that call, yet nothing now felt more vital than ensuring Daniel's return was dignified. Time passed slowly, marked only by the gentle rocking of the plane and the occasional announcement over the intercom. Ryan remained beside the coffin, vigilant and unwavering. Passengers began to notice, glancing over from their seats, some with curiosity, others with quiet respect. He caught the eye of a man several rows back, who nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the weight of what was happening. A woman sitting by the window pressed her hand to her chest, her lips moving in silent prayer. Ryan did not move, did not speak, but he felt the collective understanding, the silent recognition that what was occurring transcended schedules, rules, or minor inconveniences. Hours into the flight, Ryan finally allowed himself a moment to breathe, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the trolley. He spoke quietly, as if Daniel could hear him. "You did your duty, Daniel. Now I will do mine." The words hung in the cabin, more to affirm his own commitment than to elicit any response. And in that moment, surrounded by the sterile efficiency of the aircraft and the quiet reverence of those who had gathered to assist him, Ryan felt the solemnity of the journey settle fully around him. He was not merely escorting a coffin. He was bearing the weight of a life lived with courage, of a promise made in the heat of battle, and of a duty that extended beyond the battlefield itself. The rest of the flight passed in silence, punctuated only by the subtle adjustments of the crew and the occasional announcement over the intercom. Ryan remained steadfast, every action deliberate, every movement a tribute. And as the plane descended toward its destination, the lights of the city stretching beneath them, he allowed himself a single thought, quiet but unwavering. No rule, no schedule, no moment of bureaucratic hesitation could ever diminish the honor owed to those who gave everything. This flight was more than transportation. It was a journey of respect, of memory, and of unyielding duty. The plane touched down with a gentle thrum, the tires kissing the tarmac like a muted drumbeat. Captain Ryan Hayes stayed by the coffin, his hands lightly resting on the polished brass handles, every movement deliberate and measured. Around him, the hum of the airport was a distant murmur, passengers collecting their belongings, luggage carts rattling, announcements echoing over the intercom. None of it penetrated the solemn bubble surrounding the fallen soldiers. Final journey. Ryan's eyes scanned the arriving ground crew, the airport personnel, and the military liaison waiting to receive the coffin. Every detail had to be precise. Every handoff had to honor Daniel Reyes, whose life had been given in service. The steps down the jetway were carefully coordinated. Ryan led the trolley, each push calculated to maintain dignity, each adjustment a silent acknowledgement of the sacrifice that lay before him. Airline personnel hovered nearby, unsure how to interact, some whispering apologies under their breath for the earlier complications, while others kept a respectful distance. Ryan felt their hesitation but did not allow it to distract him. There was a rhythm to this final escort, a sacred cadence he had followed many times before, though no two journeys ever felt the same. As they reached the ground transport vehicles, a crowd had begun to gather at the arrival area. Families waiting for their own travelers slowed their pace, noticing the flag, the uniform, and the weight of history carried in the small procession. Children pressed against their parents, curious yet sensing the gravity of the scene. A man in a business suit, briefly glancing from his phone, lowered it in acknowledgement, while an elderly woman clasped her hands in quiet prayer. Ryan's presence demanded attention without demanding words. Every salute, every respectful nod, every gesture was a reflection of his unwavering duty. The military liaison began the paperwork for the transfer, but Ryan's attention remained on the coffin. He could still hear the echoes of laughter, the camaraderie shared in barracks, and the countless missions that had forged the unbreakable bond between him and Daniel. He remembered the moment they had received word of Daniel's death, the hollow silence that followed the announcement, the grief of comrades, the questions that had no answers. And now, here they were, completing the final step of what Daniel had earned, an honorable return to those who loved him in a world that could barely comprehend the cost of his sacrifice. The waiting hearse approached, engine low and steady, ready to receive the fallen soldier. Ryan motioned the trolley forward, guiding it with precision toward the rear doors. Airline personnel hesitated, glancing at one another, as if seeking affirmation that this was correct. Ryan's steady gaze and calm authority left no room for hesitation. "Move it," he instructed simply, his voice carrying the weight of experience and command. Each step toward the vehicle was deliberate, every inch marked with care and respect, the flag over Daniel's body untouched and perfect, a silent testament to honor and duty. As the coffin was gently lifted into the hearse, Ryan remained nearby, overseeing the placement, ensuring that every strap and cushion held firm. The driver nodded, recognizing the ritual, the gravity, and the responsibility of what was unfolding. Around them, whispers of admiration and respect spread through the small crowd of onlookers. Some passengers, who had witnessed the escort from the terminal windows, were now visibly moved. A mother's hand rested on her chest, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. A young man removed his hat and bowed slightly in silence. Ryan did not look at them. His focus remained entirely on the soldier he had promised to bring home. Finally, the last details were complete. Ryan stood tall, his hands at his sides, the weight of the mission shifting from physical to emotional. He took a deep breath, allowing himself a moment to reflect, though he knew the sense of duty would never fully lift. "Safe journey, Daniel," he whispered, not for the crowd, not for the airline staff, but for the soldier who had given everything. He saluted, and in that single gesture was every memory, every shared mission, every moment of courage, and every ounce of respect he could summon. As the hearse slowly rolled away, Ryan watched until the vehicle turned the corner and disappeared from sight. The airline personnel, once hesitant and unsure, now stood in quiet awe, some nodding in respect, others visibly moved. For them, the earlier disputes, the bureaucracy, and the hesitation had evaporated in the face of undeniable honor. They had learned a lesson in respect, in duty, and in the human weight of sacrifice. Ryan turned back toward the terminal, shoulders squared, eyes clear, carrying with him the solemn pride of fulfilling a promise that transcended rules, schedules, and inconvenience. In that moment, the airport felt still, suspended in recognition of what had been witnessed. The journey of a fallen soldier had concluded, but the echoes of bravery, sacrifice, and unwavering duty lingered, a silent reminder that some rules were never meant to obstruct honor. Ryan's presence, his unwavering vigilance, and his quiet reverence had ensured that Private First Class Daniel Reyes had returned home with the dignity he deserved, and that lesson, for those who had observed, would not soon be forgotten.